So, welcome to Director's Notes.
Hiya, thanks for having me.
No problem. So, just to start off, please introduce yourself and the film we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, sure. My name is Matty Crawford. I'm a writer-director. I wrote and directed this short film called Stomach Bug, which is a psychological drama that morphs into body horror. Um, it's about a single father dealing with empty nest syndrome, which kind of manifests as these physical symptoms. The film is is kind of inspired by my mum. Um, she was basically going through a very similar experience of empty nest syndrome. She used to live with my brother and his wife, and my brother and his wife's three kids. And so they lived in a very lively and loud household. And my mum also loved being a grandma. She loved looking after these three kids. However, when my brother and his wife they found a place of their own to live and they moved out overnight, this kind of lively house of six became a lonely house of one. And yeah, she didn't really cope with that so well, and she would call me a lot, and she would kind of complain about how quiet the house was. And in one of these phone calls, she kind of very casually just said, "I wonder if my body would allow for it, and if it would, maybe I would have another baby, so I wouldn't have to be alone all the time." And so that kind of was the seed to Stomach Bug, and yeah, that was where the film kind of started from.
Yeah. Are you someone who always has notes on the go? Like people have notes on their phones or a notepad when something sort of strikes and then things kind of come together.
Yeah, my iPhone notes are kind of go to. I'm kind of those annoying people who always like buy a notebook and feel like, okay, this I'm gonna fill this notebook full of ideas, and then I end up getting bored of that notebook and buying a new one. So I have like notebooks all over my room, and they're all unfinished. And I got into bit like trying to digitize all my notes, and then that was unsuccessful. So yeah, I kind of stick to iPhone notes.
I mean, it's something that you just always got on you, haven't you?
Yeah, I
You know,
don't.
speak.
Yeah, exactly. I always have it on me. But sometimes I'll intentionally won't write something down. I feel like if I if I remember that, then it feels like that's important enough for me to write down, or I feel like maybe there's something about that idea that is making me return to that idea. So yeah, I'll write down things after I maybe thought about them a few times rather than
Yeah.
straight away.
So when sort of, preparing for this yesterday, I went through your filmography, and all your sort of works and on your website, and there were two sort of quotes that I wanted to talk to you about. So you wrote about wanting to make films that burrow under your skin. And then you said about Stomach Bug, which I think once people see the film is very apt. You want them to throw up and cry at the same time.
Yeah.
What is it about you that wants to make these like sort of really visceral films, and how does that feed into your writing?
Yeah, I mean, some of my like favorite cinematic experiences are being in cinemas where you can really feel that the audience are not only engaged, but like there's a physical reaction. Um, I remember being in the cinema in Poland where the seats were quite like rickety, and you could feel someone shuffling in their seats, like five seats down. And we are watching this movie, and I could feel this person physically moving in their seat, and I just remember really enjoying like feeling someone's physical reaction to a movie. And so yeah, I love films that you can kind of provoke a physical reaction, but then not only that, I love films that kind of can actually move you. And so I feel like that's the kind of double pronged thing that I'm always trying to like achieve in my films, is like something that can kind of give you a physical reaction, like maybe throwing up, um, or an emotional reaction like crying. And yeah, when I was pitching the film to BBC Film, that was like one of the first things I said. I want to make something that will make you throw up and then cry. And I don't know if I achieved that. I feel like that's up to the audience to kind of decide. But yeah, and then I guess also uh, with the type of filmmaking that I went with in Stomach Bug, it was also kind of a reaction to my grad film that I made at the National Film and Television School, which was a very like personal story. It was very biographical. It was also quite a quiet drama.
Hmm.
So a lot of my filmmaking was very kind of restrained, and kind of, yeah, j just restraint, I guess. And yeah, I remember wanting after that to really make something that kind of would grab the audience by the shoulders and just physically shake them. And so yeah, when I was pitching the film to BBC Film, I kind of said, yeah, I also just want to explore this kind of slightly louder form of filmmaking, um, especially where we kind of live in an age where we're scrolling on TikTok and Instagram Reels, and we're just so like, what is it? The attention economy is, you really kind of have to fight for anything to kind of grab your attention, and so I kind of wrote Stomach Bug intentionally with these kind of evocative images and these kind of brash um, filmmaking language. And yeah, because that's the kind of stuff that really draws me to the cinema personally. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's what I was kind of striving to.
I mean, as someone who's seen the film and as someone who also saw the film, saw a small section of the film, at that aesthetica talk, it was great because the audience were kind of like, oh, and you could feel sort of that reaction. And, I hadn't seen the whole film. I didn't know everything. And then, when I watched it the first time round, it's heartbreaking. And I think I love the fact as well that you're telling it from a male point of view. I think that's quite unique because often, as you were saying with the inspiration from your mother, but empty nest syndrome from a male point of view is something that I don't think I've seen that often.
So there was another kind of seed to the idea, which was I'd also I just graduated from film school. I was just itching to like make something, and so I wrote a monologue for my friend who was an actor, and I wanted to just film this myself and just make something kind of scrappy. And this monologue was about this guy who felt invisible, who felt really insignificant. And in order for him to feel big or feel visible, he would bite really hard objects and leave small impressions of himself. And that would kind of make him feel kind of significant or seen. However, in one of these bitings, his tooth breaks, and then when that tooth breaks, he kind of swallows it, and then that kind of sprouts a stomach bug, which was this very visual um, growth on his stomach. And however, when he tried to get help for it, he just wasn't really taken seriously. He wasn't really heard, wasn't really seen. And yeah, despite the fact he had this really visual thing, and I just remember being like really finding this image of this pregnant bloke, just like a really evocative image.
Yeah.
And yeah, I kind of had that as a an idea. But then when my mum kind of shared me that story, these ideas kind of collided and became Stomach Bug. And yeah, that's kind of where that initial seed of the male um
Yeah.
Stomach Bug.
And then going into the visuals, because you said that was something you wanted to focus on. And one of the things that I really noticed yesterday is I loved the colors, and there's green. There's green everywhere. And sort of the more I watched it, the more I could see it. It's in the hospital walls. It's at the beginning when he's in the shower. Um, Talk to us about that choice and, what you wanted to evoke through that.
Yeah, so for every film I try to pick a color or a color palette, because that basically gives the film its identity. And that the early on you could do that. It helps inform every single decision, from the costume, the locations, the set design, the practical lights, the lighting. And green just made like sense for this kind of sickly um, stomach bug. And I love green. It's such a evocative color. Um, and yeah, I kind of made that decision quite early on. And all the locations we kind of picked because there was like elements of green naturally within the location. And then yeah, I also like to use color to like try and like enhance a mood or like put across a story beat. For example, the whole end sequence, the very kind of heightened body horror, we specifically uh, wrote in the screenplay that that was going to happen underneath blue light, which was going to be the first time we kind of see this color come through, and that was to distinguish that scene from the rest of the film, but also to like show a sort of transformation. Um, And also in terms of the lighting, we kind of very intentionally try to avoid having natural daylight within any of the interior scenes. So
Yeah.
pretty much no windows visible, and when there is, it's at night. So we kind of wanted the lighting of his house, of the hospital location, to have this kind of quite sterile green and bluey aesthetic.
Yeah. I mean, it works. It feels macabre. It feels sad. It feels claustrophobic. Yeah, and the green, yeah, it was just, and then the more I was watching, and then as well, you've got it in your titles, and it's just all beautifully tied in. So, I mean, talking about that final scene, we shan't sort of do the big reveal, but I'm looking at it. Was it an actual toilet cubicle? And if so, where did you have your camera? Where did you have the lights? How were you able to plan all of that?
Um, yeah, so that was a real location. That was actually a disabled toilet at the Rich Mix cinema. So thank you.
Okay, I probably know the one.
Yeah, thank you, Rich Mix. Uh, yeah, it was a very small toilet, but we liked the kind of symmetry of the toilet. It was very tight space, and
Hmm.
also using a peewee, which is this very large kind of mobile dolly.
Okay.
We end up having to sacrifice the peewee because it was just it was such a massive thing, and it would take up so much space. Um, but yeah, it was hard to navigate that space. I basically I'd shot listed that entire sequence quite heavily. And then once we kind of got in there with my DOP, we kind of realized, okay, because we're so limited to space, we actually have to, we didn't realize how limited we were in terms of the angles. Um, so a lot of times we had to kind of cheat and kind of move our actor into like um, a different part of the toilet and then frame it to look like he was closer to the toilet than he actually was.
When I was watching it, I was like, is it a set? And I was like, no, that looks like a real toilet. And it's just having to film all of that. And then I watched a video, you were talking about the prosthetics and everything that you had to go through, and then sort of the hours that the actor had to go off and have the prosthetics applied.
Yeah, so
How does that affect everything?
So when we were shortlisting, because we had free prosthetic changes, he
Mm.
spent the majority of the time in the makeup chair. So there was these long hours where we weren't necessarily filming. So me and my DOP, we kind of shortlisted in a way where, okay, when he's off camera, what are some like detail shots that we can film to make use of the time? And there were certain shots where we just needed close-ups of a hand, and so I actually was the body double. And
Okay.
if you watch the film closely, you'll see certain moments where, like, yeah, I'm playing Manny, and I think that was also helpful because it kind of gave me a lot of empathy to realize, okay, I'm putting this actor through a really physically demanding um, scene, and yeah, it kind of it helped, yeah, just me directing him, and also. I think Leslie, seeing how far I was willing to go, also pushed him because I was swallowing like uncooked soup with coffee ground, and yeah, there was a moment where I was, yeah. So my real sick is actually in the film. You'll see like bits of my sick. I won't say where, but my vomit makes an appearance. Uh,
I'm gonna watch this afterwards and I'm gonna look for it.
I'll point it out for you. Uh, but yeah, the prosthetics they were designed by Satinder Chumba, who is an amazing artist. I'd met him on a feature. I was shadowing for this director on his Netflix feature, and the day I arrived, they just so happened to be doing the special effects scenes, and I just got obsessed with these prosthetic dummies that they had, and I just kept following him around and just asking him all these questions and thinking about my film, kind of disturbing him whilst he was at work. Um, and then to the point that the director actually asked, like, "Where is my shadow? Are they?"
And then like he's following the shadow,
Yeah.
following another team.
Yeah, for that day I was a prosthetics shadow. And then after that, I basically looked at the call sheet and just sent him an email, said, "Hey, this was a film I kept talking about. Would you be interested? And around that time was either the writers' strike or the actors' strike, and so a lot of work wasn't happening, and he had a lot of
Yeah.
time. And yeah, fortunately, he was able to come on board, and yeah, yeah, I love him to bits, and hopefully I can work with him again, and hopefully he's kind of stuck with me. Um,
Yeah. So
but yeah,
have you developed a lot of love for prosthetics now?
yeah, I feel like in another lifetime I would have been a prosthetics artist. But yeah, yeah.
That's always a fun thing to discover, isn't it? Through,
I just love
because,
like the handmade quality to it, and yeah, every time he would send me an update, it would just like give me this boost of energy and make me like really excited about the film again. So I kind of really craved seeing the updates from him.
yeah. Right. So another thing that I sort of want to focus on and talk about is your sound. Um, you've obviously got this great horror fueled sound going on, but there's this one bit that stood out to me in particular. So it's when he's in the hospital and he stands up and he just realizes everything's not okay and everything freezes and goes silent apart from the conversation with his daughter. I loved that, struck me so much. What made you decide to cut the sound there?
Yeah, we were playing a lot with like this barrage of sound and then immediately cutting to silence. Like we wanted to play with this like very violent shift in atmosphere and just to kind of highlight it was mainly to highlight his subjective experience, and in that moment he felt completely alone. Everyone in that waiting room, they were no longer important. The only important thing was this conversation that he had with his daughter. And I remember when I was talking to BBC about it, when we were developing the script, I basically said that I want this to feel like they are the only two people who exist in the world right then and there. And that was basically the intention behind that choice. And yeah, the sound design in general, again, I told my sound designer, Oliver Mapp, who's an incredible sound designer, who's before our film was already a BAFTA nominated filmmaker. Um, I basically told him, look, I want some like really brash, in your face sound design. I want to like physically slap the audience and just have these very, yeah, almost violent kind of choices. Um, and so yeah, again, he was also whenever he'd send me a new sound pass, he would reinvigorate me and give me all this energy and make me really excited about the film because this film was made after film school, and so everyone's
Mhm.
employed full time. Your editor, your sound designer, the producer, we're all kind of working full time on other stuff, and so in between those jobs, we're able to work on this film, and so that kind of stretches out the post period for over a long period. And so a lot of times I felt like, okay, this film is starting to drag a bit, but then the editor would send me a new cut, the sound designer would send me a new sound pass, and I would get like re um, infused by it, and it would kind of give me the energy to keep going. But yeah, our sound designer also was the composer. So he's
Okay.
also a musician. I think when I started this film, so basically this film, I keep alluding to it, it was basically a production made with NFTS, which was my film school, but it's a graduate scheme, so it's for recent graduates. And so the majority of the heads of departments had to be NFTS filmmakers. Um, However, for the composer, I was really attracted to this idea of like working with a musician who has never scored a film, just because I thought like that experience could really inform and challenge me as a filmmaker, challenge the film, and take it into a very interesting direction. And so I kept approaching these either like musicians who are too busy on tour, and the whole time, my sound designer was like, "Can I put my hat in the yeah?" And finally, after like three musicians were like, "We can't do this," he just ended up writing the score and then just like sent it to me. I was like, "Okay, cool, you've got the job," and the easiest decision after that. And yeah, he just kept. And we both quickly realized that obviously sound design and composing very different skill sets. But when we were working together, we realized, okay, which hat are you wearing today? Are you in composer mode or are you in sound designer mode? And so some days we'd only focus on one because it was really hard to jump from one to the other.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was our sound designer slash composer.
Well, well done him for putting his hat in the ring.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad he did.
Yeah. But yeah, and yeah, it's like I said, I just think that was so clever. And I'm sort of now thinking back to other kind of horror and those kind of genres. Just when you cut it and just when you had that sort of diegetic or the phone call sound, it really was so impactful watching it. I like to listen to things very loud on my laptop right in front of me. Often, and I can just ignore everything else. And that was just something that really stood out. So yeah, bravo on that decision.
Thank you. I feel like me and my sound designer also watched the film incredibly loud. So
Mm.
when we always watch the film in public, we always think, "Ah, it's a bit quiet," because like I think either we just turn it up too much, and then we're used to it in that way. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to watch it too loud. Yeah,
No, I'm with you. I think all films should be watched loud. I probably think the louder the better.
exactly.
And I run a film festival as well, and often I'm in the box and I'm like, I want that turned up. And it normally is, especially with the horrors,
Mm,
because if there's, a creepy little bit coming up, I want everyone to be jumping out their seats.
exactly.
And, it goes back to your initial premise. If you want people to be creeped out and it to be under their skin.
Mhm. What's the festival you run?
So Brighton Rocks.
Ah, nice. My
Yeah, down
sound
in
designer's
Brighton.
from Brighton.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, I'll get.
Great. I'll hit him up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So let's go back so this was made NFTS with a scheme with the BBC
Mhm.
because it's such an amazing opportunity. Do you think that there were different doors that were open to you and that were available? And how did it change the production at all, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fact that I was able to exploit the fact that BBC Film were attached to this film, it kind of gave me an opportunity to really reach out to incredible casting directors. I worked with this incredible casting director, Laura Manwaring. I worked with this incredible prosthetics designer, Sitin Chumba. It just kind of helped to validate the project and gave people more of a reason to kind of either pay attention or like read the script. And so, yeah, it helped in that way, definitely. I mean, the biggest way it helped was the development process. I worked with two development execs from the BBC called Alice Ojar and Anu Henriquez. And my NFTS exec was Venetia Hawks, and they're all incredible script. Uh, I don't know what you call them, script execs, development
Yeah.
execs. And, they gave incredible notes. Basically, I hadn't really gone through the development process that rigorously in the past, and I found with them, they were able to like articulate something which was very subconscious for me, and they basically put into words what I was thinking but hadn't quite realized, and so that was often very useful, and it was always just felt like they were just helping me clarify what the idea, what my intention, what my initial intentions were. I've kind of described it in the past. That it felt like sometimes development can be okay, we need to protect this filmmaker. How do we kind of make this idea more achievable, more attainable? Um, Whereas with them, it felt like they were just throwing gas on a fire and just making it as big as possible. And I kind of really appreciated that.
I love the fact that you didn't put subtitles in.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's a lot of films these days, and like my mum, hilariously, she was watching Kneecap the other day, and she was like, "Do I just have to try and understand the Gaelic?" And I'm like, "No, mum, there's supposed to be a lot of subtitles." But then watching a film and watch, I was like, "I know this isn't supposed to. Why that decision?"
So initially that monologue was like really difficult to write. I'd written so many different versions of that monologue. And it was basically this moment where he spills his guts and he's doing it in his own language that he feels most comfortable opening up. And that was something I experienced with my mum when we go to the Philippines and she speaks in Ilocano to the family and she starts speaking with like so much she's so much more expressive in Ilocano, which I kind of don't because I don't speak Ilocano. It's kind of this like barrier which stops me from fully yeah understanding my mum because when she speaks in English she's not able to express herself as succinctly, and so
Mm.
there's always going to be this kind of um slight barrier. And so I wanted to recreate that in the film where you kind of discover that his daughter doesn't speak Cantonese and so is unable to connect. Um, and then, yeah, so initially we were going to have subtitles, but then when we put the subtitles on, I just found myself just constantly looking down at the subtitles, looking up at the actor's face, looking down at the subtitles, whereas all the emotions w were in his face.
Mm.
And and I felt like this idea of hiding the subtitles puts you in the shoes of the daughter. If you didn't understand Cantonese, it kind of puts you in the daughter's position. So when she kind of reveals the fact that, oh, what are you saying? Can you speak English? It kind of, yeah, it is intentionally tries to kind of make you understand one, where she's coming from, but also the heartbreak of, oh, right, even here that he's unable to really connect um, to his daughter. And yeah, I also discovered it slightly earlier on when we were rehearsing with Leslie, the actor who played Manny. Um, because I don't speak Cantonese, initially I wanted to cast a a Filipino actor. There's just very little Asian actors in general in the UK of that age. So when we went with Leslie, and he's from Hong Kong, he speaks Cantonese. I know when I was in the rehearsal room, we were practicing the scene. I was just so moved, even though I couldn't understand what he was saying. All his emotion was in his voice and in his
Yeah.
facial performance. And so I kind of had an inkling then that maybe this doesn't need to be subtitled. And that was really confirmed when we kind of put the subtitles on, and my eyes just kept going towards the subtitles, and that was bringing me away from the emotions. Um, and so yeah, me and my editor Francis, we decided, yeah, let's get rid of subtitles, and we were kind of uh really happy with that decision.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I didn't need them. Um, you can sort of, and it's one of those beautiful moments that you could maybe put whatever you were feeling into his monologue and into that just outpouring of emotion, of grief, of frustration, of everything that he was feeling. And I think that's a lovely moment as well, where audiences are able to connect to their own experiences and put that in.
Mm, thank you.
Yeah, so good decision. Well made. And what about you? So sort of, your Filipino heritage, and your background and, watching your films and some of the subjects that they deal with. How do you think that influences you as a filmmaker?
Yeah, so I'm uh British Filipino, my mum's Filipino, my dad's English. I grew up in the countryside in a very small village where there was like a handful of people of color, and like two of them were related to me. And so it's very cliche because a lot of my Asian friends have a very similar experience. But when you grow up in an environment like that, you kind of distance yourself from anything that makes you different. You kind of try to fit in with everyone. And so I was never Filipino. I was always half Filipino, or I wouldn't really address it at all. Um, and it wasn't until filmmaking that really kind of made me realize that your own personal history, your personal experience, uh, is a real resource when you're telling stories. And so that kind of gave me permission to really mine my personal experience, my heritage, uh, and just gave me the kind of language to really express and explore um, that on screen.
You had an incredibly impressive festival run, and now you're BAFTA nominated against, fellow NFTS graduates and some other fabulous filmmakers. I mean, talk to us a bit about that whole experience.
Yeah, I mean, we were yeah, really honored, really surprised. None of us really expected to be um in consideration. I mean, when you make a kind of a genre film like this, you make it with the intention to kind of reach audiences, to reach festivals, but you never really consider yourself in the running for like the main competition awards. Um, and so when the long list came out, we none of us woke up to kind of look at the long list because none of us really expected to be on there. And so we just found out through mutual friends. And so that was a really incredible news to wake up to. However, that news came out, and you know that like that list of 10 films are going to be cut down to five, that entire week was just filled with anxiety because I felt like I couldn't really celebrate being on the long list, because I just had this prospect of, oh, what if we don't get any further? And so yeah, my producer would constantly sit me down and say, long list is an incredible achievement by itself. Please be proud of that. And yeah, I couldn't even watch the live stream. Uh, and, Me and my girlfriend, because she knew how anxious I was and how I couldn't sleep the night before. She mentioned, let's go ice skating, and then you could put your phone in a locker, and you don't have to look at it, and you don't have to uh, find out for a while. You can just do something physically active.
Yeah.
You just,
Yeah.
um, and so yeah, yeah. When we found out, it was yeah incredible, and I honestly am really just happy that the crew are getting their work recognized. They poured like so much of themselves and their time. Um, and a lot of these crew members I've worked with multiple times. So, for example, my producer, Karima, this is this incredible producer, and we're developing our feature together. My production designer, Saher, Oliver, Matt, sound designer, composer, and yeah, all these crew that I've kind of worked with and met at the film school. It's nice to kind of have their work recognized.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means a lot.
Yeah. And I think, and I'm always blown away by seeing filmmakers, especially sort of short filmmakers, and their crews kind of stay the same. They might, there might be some iterations, but you speak to people and they've met each other either through university or at younger points, and you develop this symbiotic language and just this knowledge of each other, that is really beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, I love it because you get to grow together and you develop
Yeah.
a shorthand, and yeah, you get to really share like this nomination. It feels like a more of a shared thing because you've come up together at the same time. So
Yeah.
that's why I love it.
Absolutely. So what's your feature then that you're working on?
I will keep that under the wrap.
Okay.
I'll
All right.
I'll be working on it for a while, so
Yeah,
I don't know if I want to mention it too early, but
that's all right.
it will be
We'll look forward to it.
it will be in a similar vein to Stomach Bug. It'll be something kind of a bit out there. So
Okay. Brilliant. Well, Matty, thank you so much.
thank you for having me.